A year on from the troubled Copenhagen talks, almost 200 nations will this week try to get climate negotiations back on track. Australia wants to build on the Copenhagen Accord, but there are still major divisions as rich and poor nations bicker over who will do what and how much money will be handed over to those nations most at risk. Environment reporter Sarah Clark takes a look at what's at stake in the Mexico climate talks.
From freezing Copenhagen to beachside Cancun, this year's climate talks are half the size and without the world leaders. The United Nations says the 200 nations attending must find common ground.
A tapestry with holes will not work, and the holes can only be filled in through compromise.
Negotiations this week turned to top-level ministerial talks. The climate change minister, Greg Combet, has arrived. He wants Cancun to build on the promises made in Copenhagen.
I think everyone would like to see the sorts of commitments that have been made under the Copenhagen Accord further embedded.
Australia's agreed to cut emissions by 5% by 2020. The opposition agrees and wants the big emitters part of any climate treaty.
India, China, the United States, Indonesia, Russia, Brazil, they are the heart of the global emissions challenge.
But the Copenhagen Accord is the only international agreement currently on the table. But it's non-binding and has no set targets. And the 140 or so countries that have signed agree on one thing, that temperature increases need to be kept below 2 degrees.
Mexico is seen as a staging point about rebuilding confidence, about building a framework.
Other key issues on the agenda in Cancun include adaptation, helping nations adapt better to climate change, reducing emissions from deforestation, transparency, that is, allowing the UN to scrutinise individual nations' efforts, and finally, finance, mobilising a $100 billion fund by 2020.
We're not seeing anything like that being mobilised. In Australia's case, we have increased our aid budget, but we haven't put our climate financing on top of the aid budget, and that is what we must do.
The next meeting is in South Africa next year, then Rio de Janeiro in 2012. But given the state of negotiations, an international agreement could still be years down the track. Sarah Clark, ABC News.